and thank you for having us here in Zurich, where we came to find out a little bit more about your recently concluded project on the European Court of Human Rights.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So my colleagues and I have just are in the process of concluding our project studying legal decision making at the European Court of Human Rights, and in particular we're interested in how judges make decisions and what sort of legal argumentation they use when making decisions on sensitive moral and political issues. The project focuses on the European consensus method, which is a legal tool for making arguments about whether a new human right exists. And when using this tool, the judges at the court conduct comparative analysis first, examining laws of member states of the European Convention of Human Rights or other third-party states such as the US, Canada, Australia, or elsewhere, to determine what sort of laws exist with respect to a particular human right, let's say the right to abortion or right to same-sex marriage. And if they find that a predominant number of states have this right, then they can argue that a consensus exists about the existence of this right, and will use that when making decisions in cases regarding that right.
You've mentioned some surprises during the process of research. Can you tell us about them?
Sure. So we were hoping and are using quantitative methods and computer text analysis to try to uncover when and how judges use the European consensus method. And the first step in this process was to have human rights lawyers and legal scholars read these judgments to identify the use of language indicative of consensus. And then we use the computer to pick up other similar instances of such language. The problem that we encountered was that while European consensus is used quite frequently as a legal tool, there doesn't need to be very much consensus language for the lawyers to know that the judges are using that tool. And so for the computer, the problem becomes trying to find the proverbial needle in a haystack. We're looking for very small, very specific language that turns out to be much more difficult to uncover than we had initially anticipated. And in particular, we're finding that we find a lot of other language that might look to the computer like consensus language, but that the lawyers tell us is in fact not.
But despite these challenges, you still have some very interesting findings to your project.
Yeah, so we've found that the use of this method has increased substantially over time, and that it's applied with respect to certain articles of the European Convention of Human Rights more than others, and that certain member states are more likely to have this type of reasoning used against them when they are respondent states at the court.
And then what kind of future avenues of research does this project open?
Sure, so the next step that we're beginning to look at is what states contribute to European consensus. So when judges argue that a consensus exists about the emergence of a new human right, which states do they look to uncover that consensus? Do they always look to Northern European states, say Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden? What happens if a right emerges in Greece, Cyprus, or Georgia? Are judges as likely to cite those countries in their comparative analysis? And so that's what we're working on now, to try to understand what is at the core, what are the building blocks of European consensus.